Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hello, am I on? Because I didn't hear anything else. Am I on? Okay. Sorry, guys. I just heard a beep in my ear. How you doing? Welcome to Giving Tuesday, or as it's sometimes called, November 28th. And because it's Giving Tuesday, it must also be Sue's Day. Suze, you there?
I am, because I'm such a giving person.
Yes, you are. And I'm so glad that you remembered what day it is. I know, it's hard sometimes.
It is. Well, it helps that the little candy container that I take my pills with every morning says...
Yes. Yes. How else would we know what day it is? For that matter, how else would we track the passage of time?
I don't know, because calendars don't help. You have to know where you are.
Well, time is I don't know. I've not, Einstein, I know Einstein, he was thinking about time, and I don't quite understand it, nor do I think we have where was I hearing that the idea of the present is only about 6 seconds long, because anything before that is the past and anything after it is the future. But I don't know how they arrived at the 6 seconds.
Yeah, I think it's the way your brain works. What it takes in is now.
Okay.
But I think that to me it's like when I have people that I talk to and that call me from all over the world. So when someone from Japan is calling me at dinner time and they've already gone to bed and gotten up the next day, it's the next day. So our presence are on the same world, talking together at the same time, are two different days.
That is right. That is correct.
So, yeah, time is absolutely relative, and the term relative is relative because it can mean so many different things.
Yeah, it can mean like you're my sister.
Yeah. I don't even mean that. I mean within the realm of relativity. I know. Yeah. We just had a nice time together, so we're reveling in our sisterhood.
We did have a good time, and we're so lucky that, because I'm sure I keep reading all these little things about, where did I just see it? It was funny. I'm going to find it. Because for a lot, and it's families getting together is
can be fraught.
Yes, here it is. Wait. Okay. Oh, here it is. Thanksgiving is a time to count your blessings one by one as each relative goes home. Oh God. So yeah, I knew I'd seen that someplace. Oh Lordy. I don't know where to start, Suze. We'll start easy, okay?
Okay.
That's what I like to do.
You noticed I wasn't jumping into help.
You weren't helping. Yeah, you were not helping.
Well, usually there's something, I read something that's jumping out at me, but no.
No, I mean, we read something and we're left in a state of terror. I just, I cannot tell you the things that today I've decided I was scared that things I'm anxious about this morning that I wasn't anxious about maybe yesterday morning. Nikki Haley. I just have this horrible feeling
that she's going to be who we're running against. Yes.
Yeah, that's.
And I think it might be a Haley Christie team.
No, that'd be too much. I mean, that'd be too much. They have to. I don't think. I don't know. Yeah, but that would be. I'm just worried because we're making this assumption it's Trump, but in fact, no delegates to any convention have been chosen yet. And I'm seeing more and more of these retiring Republicans who don't have to face the voters saying what they felt all along, that he's a nutcase, a con artist, and a grave danger, and he lost the election and all of that. And they're saying this now. I saw that there was this evangelical preacher in Iowa who, from the pulpit or on his show, was railing about Trump conning everybody, even though he's talking to his flock that are all in for Trump. But to see these things starting to happen, I'm afraid that enough Republicans will wake up. I don't know. I want him to run because
You really do think we can beat him?
We can beat him. He is so clearly a terrifying human who will destroy our democracy. But Nikki Haley, not so much. She looks like such a nice lady. So I'm worrying about that. Then I'm worrying about this dog illness.
Yeah.
As my dog just went out the door to get in a car with other dogs and then to a dog park, which they say you shouldn't be going to. And I read in the New York Times science section this sentence that made me anxious. Here it is. The veterinary community as a whole is kind of scared. Well, that's unsettling.
Yeah, that is unsettling. Well, they don't know what it is. This is like when COVID hit humans. They don't know what this is.
They don't even know if it's viral, bacterial, mold. They don't have a friggin' clue. They think it's probably not bacterial because antibiotics don't seem to do any good. And are we now supposed to stay indoors with our dogs and not let them play with another dog? Or jeez, what? How come I lived all of my life and never had these sort of well, that's not true. There were scary diseases. Polio, I lived through.
Yeah.
I forgot. Okay. So there was that.
Yeah. Do you forget polio back when people were begging for vaccines and the kids were lined up in the schools and just given group vaccinations and everybody was grateful and no one thought, anything except get it to me quick.
Yeah. Thank God. No, I remember it well. I in fact had gone to a birthday party, I don't know whose, in which some kid had then tested positive or whatever, and that information was relayed, and I had to go get an injection of something called gamma globulin.
Right, that was the huge one.
Oh God. Yeah, it looked like that was scary.
No, it looked like a caulking tool.
That's right.
I mean, no exaggeration. It looked like as big a thing as a caulking thing. About a foot long with a needle that was improbably large.
Yeah, this is true. And I know, I don't know how I could have forgotten. We've had scares like this before. So, and here we all are. Oh, I know something that happened when I was in Green Bay with all you. That one day the big news was that terrorist attack at the Canadian border.
Oh, right.
You remember?
Yeah, it was some guy in a Bentley with a medical emergency, probably.
Right. But to see the media reaction and the political reaction and the people with agenda reaction without any
information,
knowledge, right? And to see, and then when it turns out they're wrong, it wasn't a terrorist attack, it wasn't this, that, there's no correction or apology. Everybody just, the whole, screaming mass just moves on. And I have to tell you, I do not recall, I read a lot, I don't recall reading the correction that it was a guy and his wife who had intended to go, I forget where. And
they were going to see a concert, which was canceled, so they went to the casino instead, and then we're going home.
And then he must have, whoever was driving had a whatever, and their foot caught. And there were media outlets, I imagine Fox News, saying that the car was filled with explosives. Because all this stuff was put out there. These were terrorists filled with explosives.
And meanwhile, you and I are sitting in the kitchen and looking at each other and going, this makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
Why is this how a terrorist? It makes no sense. No one gets hurt. There's no target. There's nothing there. There's no point.
It doesn't make
sense.
So
in the kitchen, within 30 seconds, we decided this was a medical emergency and somebody had died with their foot on the accelerator.
I remember. Yeah, we were talking and saying how could it be the stupidest terrorist in the world or what? It made no sense. But it didn't stop this, I know Ted Cruz was out with something about Biden and borders and this is what happens. And all of the Republicans were going ape shit. And in fact, the government did immediately respond, So
they closed down the airports. They tortured travelers on a holiday weekend. What else is new?
Weekend. Well, that I can see for a little bit until some ascertainment of what the hell happened was gotten. But gee whiz, to see how we're sort of led by this hysteria that passes as news gathering. Anything that can be, this was because there was a visual, there was a bang and an exploding car and all
and witnesses.
Yes, and all the buttons that could be pushed, and we're off and running. And then there's never we're just off and running to the next. And
and there's always a next. In short order, some middle-aged white guy goes and blows away 3 nice-looking Palestinian boys.
There's always a next. I was thinking, actually,
that's what always gets me. Well, let me just say, when I look at those faces, I look at the faces of the hostages. They all look like the same people. They're all beautiful. They look like brothers and sisters, for crying out loud.
They're cousins. They definitely are on the same family tree. Yeah. Well,
So people need to understand that they need to stop using us against each other, the powers that be.
Well, that ain't going to happen.
No.
Because that's the way powers...
That's how this happened.
That's how powers be.
No, that's how this happened.
And sowing strife and sowing division is, that's...
is the bread of their very existence.
Yeah, so step one. Okay. Well, speaking of that, I haven't mentioned, and this is scary, as our country teeters on the brink of extinction as a democracy. And I did on the trip back. I'm listening to a lot of things, and I heard an interview with a woman academic whose expertise is how democracies die, and in fact how there are absolute sort of quantitative things you can look at, and that there was little doubt that in 2020 this country was already what she called it. There's a word for it. We were already starting to slide down this very slippery slope. So anybody who doesn't think that this American experiment could well end next year, 24, is nuts.
No, it absolutely could.
Absolutely could.
Look at Argentina.
That's what I wanted to do. Look at Argentina, and not just Argentina. Look at, it's frightening how in times of, and this is why when things are destabilized, when people are fearful, and we've got climate change alone is creating instability, refugees are at the heart of a lot of the right-wing success, right? The invading hordes, the desperate folk from Asia and Africa trying to get into European countries, and to see these European countries starting to fall into nationalistic, racist, right-wing governments. The Netherlands. I know most Americans, nobody follows this, but the Netherlands, which we think of as so liberal, hey, you've been to Amsterdam, you can smoke pot walking down the street. And that was a long time ago. The Netherlands voters just voted in a total right-winger. His party won the majority of seats in their parliament. There is some question as to whether he's going to be able to cobble together enough of a majority, or what do you call that?
A coalition to make a government.
A coalition. But this guy is called the Dutch Donald Trump. His name, and the Argentinian guy who just won is the Argentinian
Donald Trump.
And again and again, people, ill-informed people who are in their own way being let down by their governments, who are struggling financially, and they're manipulated by disinformation, and they believe that some strong guy is going to save them. So in Europe now, you got the Netherlands now with this guy, Wilders. You got Orban in Hungary. You have the woman in Italy. She's a absolute far right. You've got this nutcase in Argentina. Far right parties have earned a role in the Finnish government, become de facto government partners in Sweden. They're gaining ground in Greece, Austria, Germany, Slovakia. And the United States is teetering. This nutcase in Argentina. Oh, by the way, somebody pointed out, what is it with these right-wing nutcases and their hair?
They really?
What is it? I'm thinking of, remember the former prime minister in the UK, Boris Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Remember his hair?
Yeah, he just had that peroxide bush. Yes.
Yeah, but it was just always sort of like totally unkempt.
It was the color I was fast. I couldn't figure out whether that was natural or he.
Either it's this like total, it's part of his brand. Trump, what is with their hair? Kim Jong-un, what about his hair? I'm just thinking, these people, the nutcase in Argentina this is the one, I don't know if you've read about him before. This is the guy who has 5 dogs. Every one of them clones of his former dog. He had 5 dogs made from the DNA of the dog he had lost, a Mastiff.
Do they have different names?
Well, I'm sure they have different names, but my God.
Thing 1, thing 2, thing 3, thing 4, thing 5.
I mean, that is just so creepy.
It is. It's creepy. And it shows a certain lack of imagination. You can love just about any dog that's in your presence for more than 20 minutes.
I don't think love is a strong suit of any of these men. Jesus, God in heaven. So I got to tell you, so looking around, it's scary. Did I say let's start with something nice?
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
Okay. Well, this isn't nice, but it didn't happen to us, so we can laugh. Okay.
Oh, okay.
This is one of the this is the best I could do today.
No, you're something nice was a car blowing up going over the Canadian border.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Okay, what's the next one?
I misdirected myself. But that takes us to the story I want to share with you now, which is what Google Maps did to a whole bunch.
Oh, those poor people. At least it wasn't a cliff.
Yeah, right. So in case you guys hadn't heard this one, a bunch of folks wanting to go home after their Thanksgiving holiday. It was Thanksgiving, I think, wasn't it? Maybe not. I don't know.
I think so.
So people, wanting to get back to LA or whatever, people who had driven to Las Vegas, they said, here's where we want to go. I guess they all were pretty much heading to California. And Google Maps told them, as it sometimes does, and I'm always grateful, hey, you don't want to do Interstate 15, which I know you think is the way to go, because there is a dust storm that is going to engulf it in the next half hour. So you got to go essentially a detour. The detour ended up in the middle of the desert on a dirt trail. They ended up, it directed them, and it was directing so many people in the same way.
They couldn't back up to get out.
They couldn't. There was a whole line of cars dutifully following Google Maps directions, and, the cars are being damaged by cactuses, rocks. These are cars that are not meant to be off-road, and they were in a place that you needed to be off-road. And then, as Susan said, they couldn't turn around because they're all, cheek to jowl, bumper to bumper. In the Google Maps has put out a statement. We apologize for what happened and can confirm that we will no longer route drivers traveling between Las Vegas and Los Angeles down the narrow back roads off Interstate 15.
Well, my thought was, it might have been the poor schmo that first took the thing that missed the turn, and wasn't actually following the dirt road anymore, but everybody followed the guy in front. You don't know that didn't happen. It's dark, and who knows what's happening.
Well, that's true, but why would...
No, they shouldn't have directed them. No, there are people that die. I'm not kidding. There are people.
No, people can die. So, and as you said, thank God it wasn't a cliff. They would have just gone. So, a lot of people in this mess were calling 911. They're in the desert. They don't have water. They probably don't even have good cell phone service. So they were calling 911, and the California Highway Patrol said, "Hey, we can't get out to you. We are knee deep in crashes, responding to crashes
in the sandstorm."
In the sandstorm.
There's a moral to this story, and it's
I don't know what it is.
Stay
home. That's it. That was the moral.
No, well, and there's this lovely couple that invites me to their wonderful New Year's Eve party every year. She's this great cook. They're a Brazilian couple who, and every year I get invited to their New Year's Eve party. But it means that I have to drive on New Year's Eve in Chicago to and from, at 45 minutes to and 45. I'd rather that to me that's like crazy. No, New Year's Eve is one of those days that I go, I think I'm going to stay home and order in.
Because there are drunks on the road.
Because everybody that's out is way too concerned with having way too good a mythical time, which never happens anyway. It's just one of those nights where you spend too much for food that doesn't taste as good because it's I don't get these times when joy is programmed.
Oh, I hate them. I rarely go. I can't remember the last time I went out on a New Year's Eve. And I was turned off New Year's Eve when I was still a kid because of what happened to our brother, which traumatized me. He must have been about 15 or 16. He went out for New Year's Eve. I stayed home to watch Guy Lombardo. Oh, God. And then who knows what time it was? It might have been 11. The front doorbell rings. And I go running to the door. And there is our brother. He was sandwiched. His friends had sandwiched him between the
storm door and the front door.
And the front door.
So he wouldn't fall over.
Yes. He was like sandwiched between the two doors with his face splat against the
front door.
And I opened it up, and I swear, I remember he just sort of like fell in. So drunk, so sick. And I thought, this is what...
That looks like fun.
Yeah. Hey, I hope I can do that next year. Jeez. God almighty. So
I didn't realize that was New Year's Eve. I knew the story.
That was New Year's Eve. I heard later that he had the story was more disgusting of things that had happened before they sandwiched him in the door. God almighty. So,
growing up in Green Bay, if you hadn't been drunk 8 times by the time you were 12, you were not a good Green Bay citizen. It was part of what made my going away to college so easy, because I learned about all of this stuff and how sick it made me long before I left the safety of my home. So by the time that I went to college, everybody else was falling off of cliffs, and I was just looking around going, you mustn't do that.
Hey, I just found the article that I wanted to refer to when I talked about the the terrorist attack at the Canadian border. So because this is an article that shares some of what the right-wing media and Republicans immediately put out. It says here, Fox immediately began employing the term Islamic terrorism. Do you believe that? There was no, okay. They continued to tell their audience that the vehicle contained explosives. Host John Roberts even speculated that the premature detonation of the vehicle might be attributed to the driver's insufficient expertise in handling explosives. And then Roberts went on to say, we don't know how long the people who perpetrated this attack have been in the country. Did they, this is what Fox News audiences are getting. Did they recently come across? Did they come in legally? Did they come across illegally, claim asylum? Were they some of the nearly 1 million who came into this country? Were they radicalized? Did they come into the country? There are so many questions to be answered. Unbelievable. And then Ted Cruz says, this confirms our worst fears. The explosion at Rainbow Bridge was a terrorist attack. That's from a senator, okay? Was a terrorist attack. Both attackers are dead. And I'm sure he never apologized for spreading that disinformation. And on and on and on. Elise Stefanik, that despicable congresswoman, I have been in immediate direct contact with federal, state, and local law enforcement, as well as the Border Patrol and CBP, regarding the terrorist attack on the northern border.
And it's all just bullshit, folks.
I know. Donald Trump Jr., how bad does it have to get before even Democrats decide it's probably not a great idea to import terrorists?
They just love to sound tough. I mean, that's what they're good at, sounding tough.
And scaring people.
And scaring people, and it's always bullshit.
People in a state of constant agitation, fear, and rage. And then, as Trump says, only I
can fix it.
Yeah. So you just stay with me. Which brings me to another issue which is scaring me. And that is, there was, I so hate these things where like newspapers, like the Times or the Post, they go out and they gather a bunch of voters, right? And they talk to the voters. And then they write up these stories.
And this is how the whole country thinks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they quote these people who only let you know that we have probably, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure
the stupidest and least informed electorate in the whole world.
So uninformed. Here is one quoted in the New York Times. She just doesn't think Biden, she's a Democrat. She thinks Biden is just not doing anything to help the economy. And then she says, it's not that I think that anybody of a different party could do better, but more that someone with their mental faculties who's not retirement age could do a better job. And she knew nothing
about what he'd done. No.
About what he'd done. And because, you know why? Because he's quietly governing the country. He is, and there's a great piece in The Atlantic today by my favorite author, Tom Nichols, headlined "Quiet Competence Could Cost Joe Biden the Election."
Yeah.
Well, what does that say?
Well, because we prefer a guy lying loudly about his accomplishments, which are none, than competence. I mean, we've known this for a long time. The country looks down on educated people, looks down on, we treasure everything awful in this country and nothing real.
Anyway, this guy goes on to say that Americans no longer care about policy. It's not how they review candidates put before them. What is he going to do? What are his policies? It is all bombast, personality, entertainment value. And Biden ain't entertaining. He just doggedly does.
Well, he used to be when he was a younger guy.
Well, but not in a good way.
I'm laughing because that one statement is our problem.
So this guy goes on, as we head into this most consequential election in the history of our country, he says, the reality is that Biden has a truly enviable first-term record of policy achievements. Even the way he's handling this horror in Hamas and Israel. I mean, it's he who, more than anybody, who brokered this current.
And by the way, everybody in other countries is saying that.
Yes. And all of this, he knows how to do the job. And people are saying he's too old. The reality is, we as a country, and we can thank media for this, and our culture of celebrity, we have now a politics of celebrity and entertainment. It's all part of the same game. And in that kind of a political contest, for the role of president, or as too many Americans think, the role of entertainer in chief, Trump has a distinct edge. And Tom Nichols says possibly, is the only hope he has, possibly only Trump's mutation into an openly fascist candidate might change the dynamics of the race, as voters do focus more on the threat he represents and decide once again that maybe boring is better. But let's not kid ourselves. We have an extraordinarily low information, low informed electorate. And people like us who are more interested, we don't realize how most people go to the polls and they vote depending on what they paid for, butter that day, even though the inflation in and of itself is rarely because of the president, right? I mean, the economy is humming.
Right. And part of it is that, they look at interest rates and think, oh my God, they're so high. And that's part of being young, folks. When I bought my first house, interest rates were 17%. 17%.
Me too.
And the only way I got to buy a house was because my dad said, find someone that's living in a house that they built themselves in 1950 because they only paid $20,000 cash to build it then. It's worth a lot more now. offer them their asking price and tell them to lend you the money themselves and you'll refinance when rates come down. And I said, really? How do you do that? Well, I did that. And we bought a house, and the people took the money. I mean, I couldn't believe it. So I paid the amazing rate of only 11%. What are interest rates right now? 6 something?
It's unbelievable.
So, people really don't know how bad things can get. These are not unprecedented times in these financial things. They're actually rather normal, healthy times. And considering the instability in the world, it's amazing how well we're doing.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, as Nichols says, he says, the problem here is that America years ago entered what he calls a post-policy era, in which voters simply stopped caring about the nuts and bolts of governing. So rather than policy, they care about politics as a spectator sport, much like sports and reality TV. But where would they have been groomed to do that? By the coverage that television media do, and also print, of politics. I mean, they don't write about policy. They write about polls.
Well, if they do write about policy, nobody reads it.
Right. They want to root for, it's like, my son's always pointing out how the Republicans are just totally have taken the template of professional wrestling. And Trump does it. So the audience, their base wants to root for heroes and heels. They want to feel high charges of emotion, especially anger. And that's not the kind of thing Biden is ever going to be able to do for these. I don't want to sound like an elitist, but these yahoos.
You feel better.
No. Oh, hello. We have a caller. Hello.
It was funny you were talking about not funny, but what happened with people filing Google Maps, and reminded me of what my sister did probably 20 plus years ago, when having a GPS device in your car was a relatively new thing.
Yeah.
And she was coming to my house for the first time. She's coming in from New Jersey. And I see her coming down the street, and she stopped in front of the house, like 4 houses up from us. And she looks at me, and I keep waving her down and waving her down. And then she finally gets there. I said, "Why did you stop there?" "Well, it said I was there." And I'm like, I was like, "Did you see me?" She says, "Yeah, but it said I was there."
Oh, dear God, help us.
I mean,
Okay.
She's one of the smartest people I know, too. You know?
Wait a minute. Smartest people I know, 2 of them are my mother and my brother. So I'm back in the old days of GPS. We are in California going to a family event. First, I have my mother in the car, and we're driving along, and she's arguing with the man on the phone, saying, "No, don't go that way." I said, "Mom, the man on the phone knows where we're going. Believe me, I'm going to listen to him." And she goes, "But how does he know?" So I'm explaining all this stuff. And how does he know where I am? How does he know where you are? So I'm going, okay, she's old. I'll explain it to her. We go pick up my brother. He's not that old. He's, in fact, a brilliant university law professor. Gets in the car. We're driving along. He says to me from the back seat, "How does that guy know where we are?"
It's all magic. You live in a magical place.
You're talking about your brother on New Year's Eve coming home.
Yes, we're assassinating our brother's reputation today.
Well, I think it's geographical because a friend of mine, this is probably over 20 years ago, he got a promotion. So he moved from Pittsburgh to Milwaukee within the company, the branch up there, the main headquarters up there, got a promotion. And the first thing he realized, he couldn't drink with you people.
No, I'm not kidding. We go into training young.
I mean, he says, I'm sitting with a bunch of girls at a table. He called them girls. He's like, I couldn't keep up with them. And then he got it. He got his first DUI. And he says, okay, I'm coming back to Pittsburgh. He says, he's like, I can't. They'll kill me up there.
You got to be really bad to get a DUI in Wisconsin.
Oh yeah,
that was the 90s too. So
yeah. Well, I think there was at one point in Green Bay it was said there was more bars per capita in town than any other city, which I find strange because I can't even think of a bar in Green Bay. But that's not the Green Bay I grew up in, right? I mean, I never went to a bar in Green Bay.
You're kidding.
I wasn't old enough.
You're kidding. When you were 15, you got a fake ID that said you were 18, which allowed you to go to the prom and get beer. There was a bar called the Prom, and then when you were 18, that same fake ID said you were 21, so now you could go to the regular bars.
Okay, well,
that was part of the underground high school culture.
Yeah, I know. I went to the prom once. I had a beer. I didn't like the taste, and that was the end of my beer drinking. Seriously. So I'm an unusual Wisconsinite in that regard. Hey, thanks for the call.
I called for more serious matters, but I want to get into it right now.
No, thank you. Go away then. Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Just going back to Biden and his quiet handling of things. I read that there was some ribbon cutting. This happens all the time. Some ribbon cutting somewhere in Florida where the entire Florida congressional delegation showed up to talk about how wonderful this was and how it will create jobs and yada, yada, yada. And it was part of a Biden policy that got through.
Right. That they had all voted against.
That's right. And this happens over and over again. They vote against it, and then they go and take credit for it. Show up unashamedly, because you cannot shame a Republican politician, and take credit for it. And I wanted to point out, because I saw this in the Times today, that two places that are close to Pittsburgh, Weirton, West Virginia, and Vandergrift, Pennsylvania, are both about to get a bunch of money from the feds, from the infrastructure package that Biden got through. One of the policy accomplishments that is setting up all kinds of job creation and infrastructure building, all this kind of stuff all over the country. These are the things that these Republicans are showing up for and lauding, even as they voted against it. And I just have to say, so do the voters in Weirton, West Virginia, that totally red state, or Vandergrift, PA, I bet a totally red city, do they know, for instance, in Weirton, that the 250 jobs that will be created by turning an old coal plant into a plant that produces a metal needed for clean energy? That's what they're doing. It is climate-based. It is turning the coal sector into doing clean energy. This is done with federal money. And like in Weirton, 250 people are going to get jobs because of this. And the climate will be improved because of this. And I wonder how many of the 250 who get those jobs will vote for Joe Biden. I suspect next to none. Because
well, you need boots on the ground. We need to go to
one will. You need to, and it says here that West Virginia Northern Community College, that has about 1,600 students in Weirton, said that they are gearing up to set up courses and internships for students interested in jobs at this new plant that will exist. Joe Biden, ladies and gentlemen, Democrats who believe in government and getting things done. And in Vandergrift, same thing. They're going to retrofit an old factory to produce some kind of thing that helps buildings be more energy efficient. And those folks in Vandergrift who end up getting those jobs, they'll go and vote for Trump. That's my guess, unless, as Susan says, you're able to pull them away from Fox News long enough to inform them, going door to door, that those jobs, that revitalization, is a direct result of that boring old man in the White House.
Well, that is but it is boots on the ground. It's a good old-fashioned hard work, political work, door knocking, talking, pleasant, neighbor to neighbor. Right. That's how it works.
Oh God. Yeah. Despair. There was also a piece in that said about why, this is for somebody like me, but it was why does short-term memory often fail? And how when you're introduced to a person and you turn away after smiling and shaking their hand, saying hello, and you don't have a clue what their name is. This happens to me.
Well, it happens to me, but I know why, because I can literally hear the static in my brain going on as their name gets said.
Me too. So we both have that kind of, I just can't.
I have an anxiety disorder.
Yeah. But they talk about, in order for something to stick in your brain, I mean, the brain will hold any piece of information for a teeny little time. It's called,
memory.
Working memory. It's called working memory. But unless the fact, the name, or whatever it is, goes through another process called encoding, it ain't going to be there in your
and the way something gets encoded, the way something gets encoded is by retrieval, by calling up the question and answering it. And the more you call up the question and answer it, it becomes encoded and placed into your memory. So when the proper thing to do when you are introduced to someone is to force the static out of your ears. Force yourself to say, "How nice to meet you, Lynn."
Yes.
And then turn away and say, "Lynn, that's Lynn."
I know.
And then a few minutes later say, "Who is that?" "Oh, that was Lynn." But this is actually the work of a friend of ours from, when I say ours, I say that's Eric and mine, from that used to be the chair of the psychology department at Washington University, a guy named Roddy Roediger, who wrote the book on how we learn. And that's it. That's how you form those things, by test and retrieval. So even with our mother, who has difficulty,
short-term memory loss,
right?
Yeah.
I can teach her how to work new things in her room by just spending a day testing her. And then she learns. And because we've worked at forming the encoding. It's very interesting to watch. And I actually reached out to Roddy, who I hadn't talked to in a few years, to thank him because he had helped my mother work her television in her bedroom, which was huge.
Yeah.
No, really.
This professor at CMU here is quoted and says that if our brains encoded everything we saw, heard, or felt, we wouldn't have any working memory left for things like walking, talking, or listening. So you don't encode. You have to, there is, and they talk about, Susan here, repeat and recite and retrieval, but also a thing that works for a lot of people is, it says, study suggests that writing by hand information will activate more of the brain than typing can, or even just writing it down can work. Music helps. Who knows? I don't know. I'll still not remember anybody.
Well, and mnemonics help. I mean, when I go to the doctor now and the doctor gives me the Trumpian list of words, I panic again. It's like a name. And so I immediately make myself a sentence somehow out of those words. So
but then you have to remember the sentence.
Well, all I have to do is remember one word, and then I can remember the sentence.
Well, I can't. So when I went to this stupid class downtown in Pittsburgh when I first got here to learn how to remember things, that whole process was, yes, to immediately think of
association.
It was so confusing, and I thought, well, shit, if I could remember, that, why the hell don't I just remember the name? I can't even remember that thing you're telling me to remember, which will then help me to remember the other thing. I heard I heard somebody say that they were talking about the hereafter. Did I tell you this?
No.
Okay.
The hereafter, as opposed to hereafter.
Right. The hereafter, and I don't know. Personally, I don't believe in it. Whatever, but plenty of people do. And I'm going to blow this because I can't remember how it works. Anyway, I will just say that this person said that they were constantly aware of the hereafter because they were always walking into rooms, like walking into a kitchen and saying, now, what was I hereafter? I didn't tell it right, but yeah. So every time I hear hereafter now, because this article that I read today was called "Now What Was I Looking For?" And in fact, it should have been, "What was I here after?" Whatever. Anyway, so I just want to point out that a big piece in the New York Times art section today about a Pittsburgh woman who has been a guest on this show. I was blown away to see this. She is a poet here. Her name is Toy Derricott. She's a wondrous woman. And I'm so happy to see this recognition she's gotten. So it's on the front page of the art section, and it's called "Where Black Poets Grow." And it turns out, and I did not know this about her, she and this other black guy founded something called Cave Conum or Cave Conum. It sounds like it's a Latin thing. I don't know. And what it is they bring, it's a retreat where they bring black poets and writers together to nurture each other. And Toy and this guy started it in 1996. And listen to this from the piece. They founded the fellowship in 96, which holds week-long annual retreats, prizes, and fellowships to help foster the growth of Black poets. Since then, they have played a role in developing the voices and careers of some of the greatest poets of the 21st century. Listen, and then the writer goes on to say, if that sounds grand, consider the receipts from the people who've gone through this group that Toy created. 2 are U.S. Poet Laureates, 6 Pulitzer Prize winners, 5 National Book Award winners, 3 MacArthur Genius Grant winners, 24 Guggenheim Fellows, 6 American Book Award winners, and the list just keeps growing. And you know where they meet? At the University of Pittsburgh Greensburg campus. Isn't that amazing?
Very interesting. Well, let me say this. These people have a real eye. I mean, they are very good at nurturing talent, but they clearly have an eye for seeing it, to know where to nurture it. I mean, not everybody is. That's a record, all right, but it's a record because some magnificent people must be presenting themselves to them, and they know how to nurture that. Yeah,
it's just amazing. And she said this happened because she would, it says here, she had often been the only Black poet in the room at gatherings of poets. And then she bumped into this guy who was maybe the other one, Cornelius Eady, and they had this idea. And my memory of her is, I don't remember why she was on the show, but it's just this warm, brilliant woman. She's a professor emeritus now at Pitt. But wow, to have nurtured that list of distinguished poets. Unbelievable. So just saying, to get that out there.
Oh, and I just want to say one other thing that when you talked about writing down something to help you remember it, there's something else that writing down things and daily journaling or just spending time to write a little bit every day does, and that's that it combats depression. It leads to better mental health. It is quite literally self-therapy. And therapists that advise their clients to do this find that their clients do better much faster. So if there's something that we could all do for ourselves, it's maybe just find 5 minutes a day to sit down and write just anything, even if it's a to-do list, even if it's a thing, a effing bucket list, just something to get yourself in the habit. I'm going to try and do it. It's supposed to be extremely good for us, and what could be bad?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's good.
Okay.
All right, Suze. Thanks a lot, and be in touch. And
okay.
I appreciate it. Bye. And guys, I'll be back tomorrow. Geez. How many tries does it take to hang? Didn't that sound like an old-fashioned phone going into a cradle? It did, didn't it? Is she on a landline? An old landline? I'm asking into the ether. Anyway, thanks, guys. I know we went over a little bit, but that's okay. I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you for being there. And remember, I'm still getting in a few emails. Can you please send me, if you have not, right now, stop what you're doing and send me your email to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And I'll put you on my list so that we can all meet up someplace, perhaps, in the future. Okay, toodles.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.